Welcome to Media Beat on Mediabistro.com. I'm Danya Blaze, and we are joined by Mr. Ariel Foxman. He is the managing editor of InStyle magazine. Ariel, thank you again for coming. So as I mentioned earlier, you've worked at several publications in your career, from InStyle Now, Details. You were the founding editor of Cargo. What do you think is the key to longevity and staying in the magazine business this long?
I've always selected a job that at least had the potential to remain exciting down the road, and that's been the case. And the other thing I've always done is selected a job if I knew that the boss at that job would be someone I could learn from. And those two things have really worked out for me, and I think I've never really charted a path to become the editor of InStyle magazine. If you look at my career, it doesn't add up to that necessarily. It certainly has, so I guess on some level it did. But it's really about choosing things that you can remain excited about and be learning, because otherwise you're uninspired at work, and I don't do my best work when I'm uninspired.
And as I mentioned, you were also the founding editor of Cargo.
Yes.
What advice would you give to someone who's looking to launch their own magazine? I'm not talking about a big publishing house. I'm talking about Joe Blow publisher says, I have a great idea for a magazine and I want to launch it. What tips would you give there?
I would say good luck. I think you have to know your audience inside and out. Know your audience. If you don't know that person personally, find those people so they can talk to you about what it is you think they want and have them validate that. You really need to know your audience. You need to know what they want right now and what they're going to want 6 months, a year from now, and keep delivering that. You also need to know, how are you going to fund it? Is there really an advertising picture out there for this type of project? So I think that's really important. And you know, when we launched Cargo so many years ago, there was a magazine strategy and a website strategy, and it's very different today in that you know that you're really launching a brand that may or may not have a print component, may or may not have a digital component, but it's certainly going to speak to its audience in the best, most appropriate way possible. I think that's the key to success for a launch.
How do you manage all the different personalities that you have to work with, not just in the office, but the publicists you have to deal with for these starlets and musicians? What's your management philosophy or strategy?
That's a great question, and it's something that I'm always refining. I have two main thoughts about the way I manage, and I try to stay true to them. The first one is really to identify what it is somebody else does really well and let them do it. I try not to micromanage. I like to give clear direction and let somebody just really shine. You know, this is what we're trying to accomplish for the brand. You do this really well. Do it really well for me and for the brand. And I think that's really worked. And I shine the most when my bosses have done that for me. And secondly, when dealing with outside personalities and managing publicists and agents and photographers, we try really hard as a brand to not necessarily win in a negotiation, but come to a halfway mark.
And the climate right now in the job market is rough. There are a lot of people out of work, not just in media, but across all industries. And a lot of people are looking for ways to stand out and get a hiring manager's attention beyond just submitting a resume and cover letter. What do you think is something unconventional someone can do to make a good impression on a hiring manager at a magazine, for example?
If you've done your research and you are fluent in our business, that to me is the most impressive thing. That's what gets noticed. And quite frankly, it's probably an unconventional technique, because you would be surprised how many people are not as prepared or not as familiar with a brand or a product that they claim to be really interested in working with or for. And so I think if you really know your audience, that's the best bet.
Okay, good advice from Ariel Foxman. He's the managing editor of InStyle. In our next segment, I want to talk about what else InStyle is doing digitally, how you're approaching the changing publishing landscape. Stick around for part 3 of Media Beat here on Mediabistro.com.